Blossoming Blade would not be lethal. Okay. Our Blossoming Blade, however, is very lethal. Oh, that is an 8-3 and a 7-7. Hey everyone, Raptor Spank here, and today we have On the Grind, the show where I cover a deck I'm playing in Ranked. I'll break down the deck, talk about some flex spots and some basic mulligans, and then we'll put it through some ranked matches and review how we do afterwards. So, this week, no balance patch whatsoever, so we're going right back to Azir Irelia, the deck that's been, completely shaping the meta lately. So figured I should give it a try. I have played the Misfortune variant before, but I have not actually played the Azir variant, or done a video for the Azir variant, I should say. So figured I should do a deck guide on it while it's going to be around for another couple of weeks, and just kind of go over how it works and some of the ways it's changed. It's changed a fair bit since the first versions we saw at the beginning of the patch, but it's obviously a very familiar deck for most people. But the idea here is Blade Dance often and do as much damage as possible and kill your opponent as quickly as you can. And one of the best ways we do this is by having a number of things that buff our blades so that they do even more damage, or they create sand soldiers when we attack, things like that, just to make sure that we are doing a ridiculous amount of damage every single turn. So first off, champion package, 3 copies of Azir, one of the best, if not the straight up best reason for you combining Shuriman with Irelia over other regions. Azir just essentially makes it so our Blade Dance gets even more value, because every time we get an attack off, so every time we Blade Dance, we'll get a Sand Soldier as well. And then, since Azir will level up very quickly, his leveled up version buffs the damage of any units that get put into play, so now whenever you Blade Dance, your blades are actually going to be threatening a ton of damage on their own, as well as the Sand Soldiers, so your opponent has to block them, but also it's terrible for them to block because those units were going to go away anyways, so you don't lose board presence, you to completely shred their board presence, or just kill them. So lots of great value we get out of here. Not to mention, once he levels up, he becomes a legitimate threat in and of himself, because he gets buffed every time you play a unit, so all of those free attacks are going to make him bigger and bigger and bigger, much like a Sparring Student or Green Glade duo. And he just can do a ton of damage that way, but just everything he does, really great with the deck. And even his champion spell's not the worst. I've rarely used it in this version of the deck. It was a little more relevant in the ephemeral version of the deck, but getting you free Sand Soldiers to attack with, and also free summon triggers, can be really, really powerful. So it's definitely something that you would cast more than 0 times anyways. And then the last champion, 3 copies of Irelia. You know what it is. She Blade Dances a lot. She has quick attack, so she can attack safely. Once you level her up, she has Blade Surge, which costs 0 mana, so she can never be killed by removal, and also constantly makes your opponent have bad blocks by moving her around the board. Essentially, really, really strong. Blade Surge is one of the most broken cards in the game, and it is a little bit hard to get her to that point, but we can get to 12 attackers fairly easily. And once we do, Blade Surge makes it really hard for our opponent to get rid of her, essentially. So, lots of great things there. All sorts of goodies. From there, we have 3 copies of Emperor's Dais for a landmark package. This is just another great way to get value out of our Blade Dance. Essentially, now when we Blade Dance, we're going to get an extra Sand Soldier off Dais. If we have multiples, we're going to get multiple Sand Soldiers. If we have Azir plus Dais, we're going to get multiple Sand Soldiers. It just basically works to boost our damage output and multiply what we're able to do to our opponent. But from there, looking at our follower package, 3 copies of Dancing Droplet, the Blade Dance Classic. This lets us keep, essentially, it's free because it gives us a spell mana for the one that it costs, and we can do a lot with spell mana, so that is really, really good for the deck. And it's elusive, so it can attack fairly safely, often anyways, and we can do a lot of tricks with picking it up, putting it back down to buff things like Sparring Student, Green Glade, Azir, etc. So a lot of great value we can get out of it. Plus it curves out really well with Irelia, because we can play this, then a 2-drop, then Irelia, and still have mana for that Flawless Duet as well. So lots of good value out of this. Then from there, Most aggressive Shurima card in existence, 3 copies of Dunekeeper, can do 4 damage on turn 1, it gives us double summon triggers for Azir, it can give us 2 attackers for Irelia, really works well to level up our champions, and pressures our opponent incredibly quickly, so lots of great use here, and it can be combined with other things to give you that 2 summon triggers for 1 mana to buff damage output as well. Speaking of which, 3 copies of Sparring Student, this is one of the things that benefit from that. It gets +1/+1 until the end of the turn for every unit you put into play, so things like Dunekeeper will suddenly make it a 3/3 instantly, and Blade Dance that creates all these extra blades will also boost it, so like even a Ribbon Dancer will make it a 3/3, a Blossoming Blade will make it a 4/4 right there, so these get out of control really, really quickly, and it's not really effective for your opponent to block it either, because if they can't kill it, it's just going to go back to a 1/1 anyway, so it's not going to be damaged anymore, and the damage isn't going to carry over, so just a really good tempo piece that can pressure your opponent very quickly, and against slow decks, it will just absolutely blow them out of the water. From there, similar kind of vein, 3 copies of Green Glade Duo. Now this is a lot easier to kill than Sparring Student because it only gets +1/+0 for every unit that goes into play, but it's elusive, so it's a lot harder to block as well. So this is another great card for just tempoing out your opponent and killing them in one turn combo kill using Blade Dance for extra blades and Sand Soldiers, etc., just to really outvalue your opponent. And from there also, I have a 1 copy of Navori Conspirator. Essentially, this is kind of like a lead, follow, or retreat, but it also comes with a 2/2 elusive body. You put it into play, pick something up, play that thing again. There's a lot of stuff where you get value out of playing them, so being able to pick them up and play them again, really, really good. Lots of great things that can do for us, and can be used with things like Dancing Droplet to get us a lot of tempo off of Sparring Students in Green Glade Duo by playing Conspirator, getting the 1 trigger, picking up Dancing Droplet, playing it again, and just doing things like that. So it's a one-of, but obviously it can cause some problems when you don't have something to pick up with it, so that's why we're only running 1. Then from there, 3 copies of Ribbon Dancer, kind of a classic Blade Dance card here, because it's only 2 mana, and it gets you 2 units, essentially, and gets you 1 attacker off the Blade Dance, so lots of good value there. Works well with our Azir and our Emperor's Dais to generate extra Sand Soldier value as well, and again, it does it all for very cheap, so that's really the big reason we're running it. It's also very easy for us to pick it up and then put it back into play in the same turn, so lots of degenerate things we can do with that. And then 3 copies of Blossoming Blade. This is the big Blade Dance Hauser because it gives you 2 blades attacking. It's also a 3/3, so it can trade well and block fearsomes. Really, really good, especially combined with things like Sparring Student and Green Glade Duo, because it does give you those 3 summon triggers right off the bat. And if you can ever pick it up and play it again, super, super strong. Really good card. And finally, the other big reason for going Shurima, 2 copies of Inspiring Marshal. Similar to level 2 Azir, this just really pumps our unit, so it makes our Blades and Sand Soldiers a legitimate threat on their own. So even in the mid to late game, your opponent's still having to block and lose their units to your Sand Soldiers and Blades because, well, they have this huge damage buff. So really, really solid card, and it's a 5 mana 4/6. Incredibly hard to kill, especially on curve if your opponent's been spending all their mana. So, yeah, really broken card, and the fact that it didn't get nerfed is absolutely outrageous, but really good for us. One of the best reasons to run Shurima with Irelia, because of the fact that this can just kill your opponent out of nowhere, and there's not a lot they can do about it. From there, we do have our spell package, though. 3 copies of Shapestone right off the bat. Hem and hawed about this because we only have 3 landmarks with Emperor's Dais. But honestly, we have so many things that are at 1 health, and there's so much good removal for things at 1 health, that honestly, just casting this as a +1/+1 is really, really good for us. The amount of times this has saved a Green Glade Duo, so it deals a ton of damage to our opponent, has been quite a number of times for me. So really, really good, even if you haven't had a landmark come down. And then obviously, if you have, this can kill your opponent out of nowhere by buffing something that they chose not to block. Then, one of our best pickup, put back down cards, 3 copies of Lead Follow, 2 mana, pick up something. So, like I mentioned, we have a lot of value out of play triggers, so a lot of things that do great stuff for us when we put them into play. So being able to pick them up and then put them into play again, really, really good. especially when it also comes with a free Flawless Duet that can summon 2 blades for only 1 mana, so really, really good again with things like Sparring Student, Green Glade Duo, Azir, Irelia, any of our Sand Soldier creation stuff, so lots of great value we get out of this for very little mana, so easy 3 of in the deck. I've also chose to run one of Nopify. This has been such a great card in the Misfortune variant for me, and similar value it gets here. It can stop a Culling Strike on your Azir, things like that. There's a lot of good things that Nopify can stop in the current meta, so running a one of just to have an answer in case for some of those things, really, really great. Also similarly, one of Copy of Retreat. Another good card, same as Lead Follow, except instead of Flawless Duet, it lets you put something back into play for 1 mana, so we get a lot of value out of this. It can be also used as protection too, so that's really, really good. Just a nice one of to have, so you have like 4 different Lead Follow effects, essentially. And finally, 2 copies of Homecoming. Really wasn't sold on this card originally, but after playing with it, really, really strong. Right now, the meta doesn't have a lot of strong removal. It's mostly 1 damage-based removal. So being able to Homecoming pick something up, you can actually get away with that a lot more than you used to be able to get away with it. Because if you use on something like Irelia, Navori Conspirator, or Marshal, something with a little bit of health, they're usually not going to be able to remove it. So you can bounce that back to hand, bounce their thing, and then if the thing that you're holding has play triggers, well, you could play it again, get those play triggers. Lots of good value you can get off this Homecoming. So it's a really good way to have removal in the deck that also helps our own strategy as well. Now, as for some flex spots for the deck, there's not a lot you can do with the units. In fact, mostly what it is you can just play around with the units we have. You can go up Conspirators, you can go down cards. I've seen people run variants without Inspiring Marshal. I think they're absolutely insane, but that's something you can do. Going down followers to go up spells, or going down certain spells to go up followers. You could drop the Nopify and Retreat to get a full package of Navori Conspirators, things like that. But some other followers you could consider. Again, I wouldn't personally run these, but you could run Ruin Hopper to improve your Shapestone. Kind of really weak in the deck, but it is a 3-1 that can be decently threatening. And again, it gives you vulnerable onto your opponent's stuff, which lets you kind of set up attacks better. But more importantly, it gives you a more reliable way to upgrade your Shapestone for higher damage output. But I really don't think it's worth it, but it's something you could consider. A better thing I've seen some people run is Merciless Hunter. We're not really built around vulnerable and fearsome, but having that extra 4/3 to block other fearsomes, not to mention it can actually do really, really good in the mirror matchup, especially since you can give vulnerable to things, but you can kind of force a lot of damage through in that matchup because of this. So I've caught the receiving end of this and been surprised with how effective it can be, but it's still not consistent enough for me to really run it. But what you can do, there's a lot of different spells I've seen come in and out of this list. Specifically, so we have the one of Nopify. You could go up more Nopifies, drop the Retreat for another Nopify, things like that. But something that was in a lot of the original versions of this deck was Twin Disciplines, up to 3 copies. The nice thing about Twin Disciplines is that you can use that kind of as just a great answer to whatever your opponent's doing. It can save your own units by giving them 3 health, or if your opponent taps out and they leave something unblocked, this can be a huge amount of damage to do out of nowhere. It doesn't need landmarks in play for it to do that, so it's something to consider, and it's a little bit better if we see some of the bigger removal come back into things. Shapestone kind of works better with things that are doing only 1 damage. This is great for things like, say, Ezreal Draven, who's going to be doing 2 to 3 damage. This can often save your units through that. So that's really, really good. Another thing you can run is Deny. Right now it's not particularly great because there's not a lot of high mana things that we need to stop, because this deck has forced those decks out of the meta. So it would be great if you're seeing a lot of like Ruinations, or like it does work well against Withering Wail. That's one of the better things we can grab, or Stopping Atrocity, things like that. But otherwise, it's kind of expensive on the mana end, and we tend to be a pretty mana-intensive deck, so I'm not running it, but it's definitely something you could consider, especially depending on how the meta changes. And finally, something people were playing originally was Will of Ionia. Right now, I mentioned that you can really get away with Homecoming, but if the meta does change and Homecoming starts becoming a lot less consistent, Will of Ionia is a much more consistent way to deal with things that you want to bounce the hand, and that can also be used defensively as well. The big downside being that it costs 1 more mana, and that Homecoming, if it works, being able to bounce something of yours and bounce something of your opponent is potentially a big benefit on both ends of that, whereas Will of Ionia will only do 1. But definitely something to keep an eye out for. As for the basic mulligans, we're an aggro deck. We're looking to run our opponent down as quick as possible. So into most matchups, we're just going to be trying to do our thing more than deal with our opponent's things. Now, there are certain things to keep in mind, or certain matchups where things are going to be worth a bit more. Against Nasus decks, you're going to like Elusive a lot more because that's hard for your opponent to block, whereas things like Dunekeeper, they're going to get a lot of value out of. Sparring Student's also not bad because it often won't be killed by what your opponent blocks with. But into matchups like that, you're going to probably want more like Elusives. But generally speaking, no matter what you're looking for a good first 3 turns. We're talking something on turn 1, then something on turn 2, or many somethings on turn 2, into like that Irelia or Azir turn 3. And that's going to be your best hand against every matchup, essentially. Obviously, Irelia is going to be better into mid-rangier decks because Quick Attack makes it very easy for her to survive damage. And then you might want to keep an Inspiring Marshal if you think your opponent's going to be able to stall out the early game so that you have that late game answer for pumping a bunch of things. If you're expecting them to have a lot of removal, keeping stuff like Shapestone and Notify to protect your stuff can be good as well. But generally speaking, you're looking for the maximum damage output. If you can keep, like, Sparring Student turn 1 into double Dunekeeper turn 2, you're going to keep that hand against every matchup, no matter what. It doesn't even matter. That's so much damage you can potentially do there that it's just, you wouldn't consider anything else, and things like that. Emperor's Dice is probably worth keeping into most matchups as well, because of how quickly it can amplify your damage, and really, turn 2, we do have a lot of things that can come down with Ribbon Dancer and Greenglade Duo, but Emperor's Dice is one of the better turn 2s you can have. The only thing that I might think is better is Greenglade Duo if you think your opponent's going to have a hard time removing it and a hard time blocking it, because then you can start getting that super damage real quick. But otherwise, either one is a really great turn 2, and you're just looking for that perfect curve out. If you're against aggro, you just want to race them. If you're against control, you just want to race them. Against mid-range, that's where you start considering things like looking for elusives or looking for damage amps like Inspiring Marshal to just run them down. But otherwise, that's the basic mulligans for the deck. And if you like the deck, there's a deck link and a deck code in the description below. And let's jump into some ranked matches and see how we do. Okay, Freljord Overwhelm. Now a lot of people were talking about this deck being a good, or being good into this matchup. Now I personally highly disagree, but we'll find out. Maybe. We'll see what happens. That's a pretty good card. This is our highest damage turn 1 too, so yeah, not a lot of these decks run any turn 1 play, so we're very likely to get that full damage through. Some run Omen Hawk, but most don't run anything. Oh wow, and he got the Omen Hawk this turn? That's really unlucky for him. Am I willing to trade with that? No. Now, what do we want next turn? Do we want the Irelia or do we want Azir? Yeah, we'll do Azir. Okay. Mildly annoying, but only mildly. We can always bounce him to hand and put him back into play, which is, unlike something like Misfortune, it's just all good for us because then we get another summon trigger. Alright.
The boy who plays at being emperor. And the once beloved soldier, no longer fit to serve. I surrender.
Yeah, we can take the hit on that. And we can trade here. Bounce Azir. And then we put Azir into play. Do we play this Irelia or bank the mana? I think we play
No
Irelia.
mercy for those who desecrate our home.
They will find our lands do not take well to intruders.
I think we just play Inspiring Marshal here instead of going for this flawless duet.
Shows of power excite the people and quell our enemies. Send and
Yeah, I think we're fine with that. Do we risk anything else? I don't think so. Debatable though, because this overwhelm will kill us eventually.
send and sky, past and present.
Especially if he finds the 8 mana pump spell. Unless we pull Homecoming off the top of our deck. Okay, that's scary. The fact that he took a hit like that, very scary. That means he has something up his sleeve. Do we actually just risk Azir at this point? That's sketchy.
No retreat.
Well, that doesn't quite have us dead, but it has us very close to dead. Well, sometimes they have it. What a terrible start to the night. Holy crap. That was unbelievable. Not a bad matchup, just that was insane luck on our opponent's part. Oh well, on to the next. Okay, Deep Monsters. I have no idea how this matchup goes. Well, they do have a lot of ways to kill things like a green glade, but in theory that's good for us. They do have elusives eventually. This hand is not particularly great, though. Shapestone's actually fairly good. Because if he has, like, Vile Feast right now, we just Shapestone and keep it alive. Yeah. Okay. Fairly good timing on that Shapestone. A little unfortunate that we had to waste it this early, but we get a nice little 4 damage swing out of it. Not that bad. Ooh, Inspiring Marshal, I like that a lot.
Shuriman, your emperor has returned.
Okay. I don't think we Blossoming Blade here. I think we're saving Blossoming Blade for the turn after Inspiring Marshal. We're still pretty far off from leveling up this Azir, which is pretty insane. Okay, well, Shapestone again. It actually denies him the deep trigger off of this Sea Scarab. Funny enough. Because now we don't get the kill, so he doesn't get the last breath trigger. Well, he is teched very heavily for this specific matchup, and it's still not working for him yet. But maybe he's slowed me down enough. We'll find out. If he swings with this Toad, we will absolutely block that. Okay. This time it'll work. But we do have another one in hand. Oh, plus a way to pick it up and put it back into play? Oh, Lord. We can actually do... Well, we can't put this back into play, I suppose, if we pick it up. But yeah, we are looking pretty sweet right now.
Tell the people what you have seen today.
That's gonna be one big Sand Soldier. I'll tell you that much. Alright, that'll toss a few cards for him. How close is he to deep? Not very. Okay. So I can probably swing with these two and not lose them. Okay, that changes the dynamic somewhat. I mean, I can still swing with this if I want. And it will live. Okay. Yeah, it's fine.
So much lost.
Maybe keeping it alive so I could pick it up with retreat and play it next turn would have been the better play, but I feel like going all in is fairly solid for us, even though we did just give him a lot of cards towards deep. Ooh, that's another Withering Wail burn, though. That's pretty sweet. Oh, he's out of Withering Wails, and he's down to 1 Vile Feast. And he's going to hit deep this turn, likely. Lead Follow's pretty sweet. Yep. Well, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Who blesses you?
Peg her up. Play her again.
To the street! Show them the might of our army!
Shows of power excite the people and quell our
Maybe it would have been better to do that next turn, so I could have gotten the attack off her with it as well, but... Oh wait, he's just like dead right now, yeah. Never mind, that was the right time to play that. We take those. On to the next. Okay, Ezreal Draven. So Culling Strike is bad for us. They've got a couple of things that are kind of bad for us. Shapestone could be good, although we don't really have any way to actually get a huge benefit out of it right now. But it should be good into this matchup. Kind of want to be more aggressive, though. Especially since we're on the attack turn 1. Oh, well, we got Shapestone anyways. Ooh, there we go. Let's see if he can kill it. If he can kill it, he should kill it. That's just kind of a rule of thumb for sparring student, is that the sooner you can kill it, the better. It's probably worth playing Ribbon Dancer now. I mean, we are an aggro deck, so getting off to the races early is pretty advisable.
My name will echo through the ages.
He's in the deep think tanks now. The fact that we have an extra Azir is pretty big for us. Especially since we do have this Inspiring Marshal. So, like, assuming the worst and he just, like, kills this Azir this turn. Okay, we'll full swing. Well, a minus Azir. But if he is able to kill our Azir, we have the extra one to play next turn, plus bank Shapestone, plus then go Inspiring Marshal the following turn. Okay. It's a little sad to lose that, because obviously with Conspirator, there was a lot of really busted things we could have done with that card.
Stand down.
I mean, that's pretty sweet, actually. We might do that. What you got? Mystic Shot on him. Okay, I mean, nothing I can actually do about that, so just gotta let it happen.
Steps in my heart feel light as air.
He's pretty close to leveled up now. I feel like this is actually going fairly well for my opponent, though, as much as this matchup can go. Because we're not really gas-pedaling him yet. I know that sounds ludicrous to say that, but we actually are not doing that much insane stuff to our opponent yet. And we're tapping out to do it, so we don't have the banked mana for protection. So my opponent's kind of free to do whatever he sees fit. Okay, so Ravenous Flock, I presume. That's actually one of the best possible finds that could have given my opponent. That's actually pretty insane. He could not be luckier.
Let's do this.
Okay, so we're gonna eat that. We're gonna eat that and then pick this up next turn. Oh no, never mind. It's gonna die anyways. But we're taking out the life gain for him, and that's the important thing here. We can't let that live. That's way too devastating for our game plan. I can't believe that's what he found, though. That's incredible luck on his part. Yes.
Witness perfection, meatbags. Your Emperor commands. Tell the people what you have seen today.
Does he have a Culling Strike? Miracles do happen. See? Like I said, I think this is going as good as it could ever possibly go for my opponent. And it's going as absolutely terribly as it possibly could for me.
God axes need victims.
Well. Alright, we'll play Inspiring Marshal here.
Azir welcomes all his...
I mean, if we can get this Conspirator out, things get a lot better for us. Because part of the problem right now is that we're having trouble getting this out. If we get this out, it can attack freely and generate a ton of value for us. The problem is we are not having an easy time getting that. But now we'll be able to bank this Shapestone at least. Okay. Fine by me. The fact that he would hesitate about that is a little bit interesting. Because that means he either has something he's thinking about discarding that to, or he has something else that he's thinking about, spending the mana on. Like that. Well, I can play another one. That's not a problem yet.
Safety disengaged.
That's pretty sweet. I like that a lot, actually. For very obvious reasons. Question is, what does my opponent have? Thermogenic would be pretty rough for me because this Anthem effect is actually what makes the rest of our hand really broken. But if he spends all of his mana on that, that's also fairly good for us.
Show them no weakness.
Okay, well, in the Misfortune variant of this deck, Irelia is very good. But she dies very easily to things right now. And if I use this Flawless Duet, it's actually still not enough to level her up. Not yet. It's close, but it's not quite enough. And Blade Surge is part of what makes her really strong. Well, anything that blocks is dead. Yeah, that's fine. Deal 3 damage, so Shapestone can't save her. Unfortunate. Highly unfortunate.
Looking for a daring escape? Quietly now.
If we had one more attack previously.
So ordinary.
I mean, there's no world in which he doesn't block that. He'd be absolutely insane to do so.
perfection.
I mean, another elusive is pretty good.
Awaits.
I mean, I can't take a hit that big, right? I don't think so.
Call that sneak.
Because we are very close to dead.
Safety disengaged.
Now we're cooking.
Very, very close to dead. Ezreal's not leveled up yet, so that's cool. That gets me to 3. Yeah, my opponent may have found it.
Proudest days remain ahead.
I don't think it's worth playing this yet. I think I'd rather bank the mana and then play this.
System upgrade.
Although we can die to slow things.
Do the gun show.
Okay.
Everything's better with company.
Says you.
Prime and ready.
They'll never see us coming.
Well, I'm presenting lethal.
You barnacle!
Does he have an answer? There we go. Close. Really close. That was a real knees weak, arms heavy moment there, but we got it. We'll take it, no matter how close it was. But yeah, that went very smoothly for our opponent. But they ran out of gas at the critical moment there. And there were so many answers they could have had. They could have had more Mystic Shots. They could have had... I mean, Static Shock doesn't work at that point unless they can do 2, which they did have enough mana for, but they were starting to run out of cards, so we were kind of favored. And the reason I played Green Glade Duo the previous turn is that if I went into this turn and he did have Mystic Shot, for example, if I wait and play Green Glade the next turn, he ignitions in response, and then he has lethal Mystic Shot. So that's why we did that. But we'll take the win. On to the next. Alright, the mirror match. Well, we've played it a bit more, but that does not mean anything. Emperor's Dice I like. Oh, this is so slow, though. Like, Blossoming Blade's good, but I think we can do better. I think that's the key. I think we can do better. I think this is worth keeping regardless. Oh, well, we got the Blossoming Blade anyways. Sweet. Ooh, and we get free damage in. Nice. Like that. Alright. I see your Emperor's Dice, and I raise you Emperor's Dice. Okay, another Dice. That's sick. So next turn I can go Dice Ribbon Dancer?
My name will echo through the ages.
No, I can swing with him and get more damage.
Sedition.
Yeah, that's fine.
Glorious sacrifice.
He did just take a chunk for that, so we like that at least. And we have so many extra attacks we can do now. Sparring Student the next turn plus Blossoming Blade, that's pretty sweet.
Shuriman, you see what I see? Carry it with you.
Emperor, I am honored. Together we are part.
That is scary.
Together.
That's a pretty sweet turn for him. Look how many attacks that is. I mean, he's gonna get a bunch too here, but
You dare.
this Ribbon Dancer can now block though. We don't care if this lives. Wow, he's playing ballsy. And we're 1 unit summon away from Azir leveling up. That's sick.
Azir's command.
So in this case, we block a Sand Soldier with Azir. Probably. Actually, is that too risky because we died to Shapestone? That might be too risky.
Listen up.
We have high health. We can take a hit like that. Maybe we're playing a little bit too safe around that that possibility, but I think Shapestone's just too much of a risk to not play at least a little defensively. Lead fall, pick it up. Pick it up, play it, and then duet. Yeah, that's sketchy. Well, the good news is he definitely can't do he can't kill us with ooh, but that's already boosted damage output.
Shuriman
Nope. He had an incredibly slow hand compared to ours, but
commands.
he was able to make it count.
Sedition.
But he can't Shapestone now, so at least we know Azir can block. But certainly not ideal for us what just happened. Okay, Shapestone's nice.
What do you call that technique?
Tell the people what you
Hopefully
have
he
seen
can't
today.
get enough attacks instantly to kill us. Blossoming Blade would not be lethal. Okay.
May my steps
Our Blossoming Blade, however, is very lethal. Oh, that is an 8-3 and a 7-7.
You dare.
Well, we could kill his Azir. We probably don't use Shapestone here because we can always just open attack with the rest of our units and get a kill that way. Whereas if we do Shapestone, it does have some issues if he says Homecomings, for example, to bounce things. Yeah, like that. Although, doing that means he loses. There we go. And that's one way to win the mirror match. Yeah, bounces here to my hand, that's fine. Oh, he had me worried there for a minute. For half a second, he had me worried there, but, yep. That's the way the cookie crumbles. And we have Thresh Nasus. Now, this is supposed to be a bad matchup, I believe. So, that doesn't bode great for us, though this hand, pretty sweet. It feels bad to do this, but I feel like we're starting on Dunekeeper, not Sparring Student. Okay, well, double Sparring Student next turn is actually pretty solid.
The Emperor commands. The land obeys.
Okay, now we just swing on the 1. Yeah, that's fine. Although I suppose maybe it wasn't worth it because we just gave him a Slay trigger, so that might have been a mistake. We actually want Dunekeeper to live here.
How'd you do that?
Actually, what do we want to do here? So my thought process here was that I wanted to play double Sparring Student and then go Conspirator Dunekeeper the following turn. But then we don't play Irelia. You know what? That's honestly fine.
Check out these moves.
That's fine. Okay. If he full swings, we'll take the full damage. Yeah, I had a feeling he might not even attack, though. That's a good start, at least. Okay. Well, now they survive Vile Feast, at least. And they should actually survive most things he could play this
The
turn.
desert. by my side.
Do we swing with a Sand Soldier just for the Irelia trigger? I think we might, even though it's kind of not in our best advantage. Or our best interest, I should say.
Keep your distance.
Yeah, that's about expected. What's he got? Okay, that's fine. So he gets 2 Slay triggers, so he's up to 3 now? 4 now, because of the Ravenous Butcher, right. So he's had 4 Slay triggers. We've managed to get 2 damage in, so, you know, that's a start at least. See what he plays this turn. Good chance we're going to Blossoming Blade. Especially now that we have 2 in hand. Oh, we have some pretty beef blockers now. Okay, he took the damage. Nice. We like to see that. Now, do we Blossoming Blade next turn, or do we Irelia? I guess we Irelia. Because she does effectively the same thing as Blossoming Blade. But she can only do it on our turn, whereas Blossoming Blade can do it on their turn. I'm fine with giving him another Slay trigger. So that brings him to 5. So Nasus is a 7/7 currently. Okay. Oh, wow. Alright, so he's at 6. Nasus is an 8/8. Not bad, not bad. Oh, lord, that's very tempting. We're gonna have to wait on that a turn, though.
I'd follow you to the black heart of Noxus itself.
Pride filled us forever.
So that'll get her to 9.
United in war.
So then if we swing with all 3 of these, she levels up.
See what we see, soldier.
Quietly now.
We were
Okay.
born in the first light,
Well,
and we will defend them
we're in a
until the
decent
end.
spot. Could be in a better spot, but we're in a decent spot. And Nasus is not yet a 10/10. Oh, we can bounce Nasus.
The mortals know what awaits them. Few can know
Is it
what
worth
death
doing
and
that?
eternity hold in store.
Or should we play Inspiring Marshal at this point? I think we play Marshal.
Emperor's favor upon you.
This too shall end.
We're definitely not taking that damage.
I'll always catch
That gives him another Slay trigger, but that's fine. I could have picked it up with Retreat, but I don't think it was worth it.
Your time is done.
Well, I see what he's going for, but not really planning on letting that one happen. Okay. Well, in that case, let's actually hang on. Bouncing that would be kind of bad for us. You know what? Sparring Student might not be the most powerful thing for us right now. Ooh, that worked. Oh, that's really good.
You fulfilled a life undone.
He did not have right. Good to know. So we have a number of things we can do here. Play Blossoming Blade, which would be fairly strong.
The mortals know what awaits them.
So, Blossoming Blade, but then blocking stuff will cause him to decrease the damage output. I think that's fine.
Our enemies approach. My hands are shaking.
Then hold on to mine. We'll face them together.
So increase the damage we do right now.
Life and death inexorably interwoven.
We are getting to the point that an atrocity could just kill us, though, from even that power point. So I can swing with this.
Navori,
And her.
formations. Flow.
And that. And that does present lethal. Gives us another Blade Surge.
You try my patience.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I don't think we really want to trade this Conspirator away.
Not you.
Okay. Now we just have to make sure that he can't actually kill us this turn.
What delightful agony we shall inflict.
We weren't expecting boulders. What's today's lesson?
Okay. So far, so good. Yeah. I mean, it's not worth bouncing it to my opponent's hand. Probably want to bounce this Dancing Droplet if possible. Although it's going to be a lot harder for that to work. Interesting. Yeah, I was going to say, that would be pretty wild. Okay. So what is our best possibility here? Oh wait, that can't block. We don't really want to take that damage, but well, I mean, we can bounce that, I suppose.
Focus. Focus.
So then we retreat this,
Hurry. They
and we
await our
homecoming bounce her to bounce that. And we stay at full health. And then we put Irelia back into play. He's not particularly close to dead at this point, though, and that's the real problem. So we're putting up a good fight, but because of this leveled up Nasus, we aren't particularly close to killing our opponent right now.
Remain ahead.
Are we just dead, then? That's unfortunate. I think we're dead now. Whereas if she lived, we had the potential to do 2 3, 6 damage. Oh, so it didn't even matter. Yeah, that's game. We just lose on the swing back here, so it doesn't matter. Really bad matchup, and we almost got there, but not quite. They had enough blockers that they were able to throw out there, and leveled up Nasus is really, really bad for the deck, so, you know, close but no cigar. Alright, so how do we do in our matches? Well, we went a grand total of 9 games played, 5-4. Pretty close to mimicking the win rate, but with a small sample size, that is only 55% win rate, or 56, somewhere around there, but which is higher than the meta's win rate, but honestly, it's kind of back and forth, and right now there's a lot of decks that kind of counter this that people are playing, so that definitely pushes down the win rate on this. Overall, though, lost to Thresh Nasus, lost to DF Fiora. Both of those are very expected, predictable ones. We lost to Renekton Sejuani Sivir. That's really unpredictable, and my opponent just got straight up incredibly lucky, so I don't really care for that one that much. I don't think it counts that much. You saw it. I really think that was just kind of, hey, look at the draw. They got the 1 in a million that game. And then the other loss being to Azir Irelia. I played it twice. I won once, lost once. So that one was disgusting, though. That was a very frustrating game. My opening hand, I kept Greenglade Duo and Emperor's Dais, and I pitched Blossoming Blade and one of the spells. I think it was Lead Follow. And then after Mulligans, I had Emperor's Dais, Greenglade Duo, and Lead Follow plus Lead Follow. And then I drew Lead Follow off the top of the deck. Like, worst hand I've ever seen in all of my games. Worst hand ever. And we still got way closer than we should have. But it was just a wash. Terrible, terrible hand. And my opponent had the perfect one with, like, the turn 3 Azir and everything. So it was just like, it was never going to work out. And they even had Shapestone to kill us out of nowhere at the very end, too. With the very narrow margin we had to win, went away with that. But all in all, 5-4, winning record. Deck is, you know, it's what everyone knows. Everyone's seen the deck. Everyone's seen how good it is. The deck is really, really strong, and it's completely and totally warped the entire meta around it. The fact that DF Fiora is back, the deck is terrible. Fiora's been nerfed recently. She's down to 2 health. The deck was bad before that nerf, and so it's still bad now, but this deck warps the metagame so heavily that Fiora's back with the combo Fiora deck that's just super greedy Fiora win only, but it's fine because, like, you're not playing many control decks or against many control decks like Matron Control that are just going to kill your Fiora out of nowhere. So you can actually get away with a lot against the Thresh Nasus deck. You can get away a lot against the Irelia Azir one. And I think that's the big point of just how bad this deck is for the meta and why Riot is completely off their rocker for not nerfing it in any way, shape, or form. But my biggest takeaway playing Azir Irelia, and I know I've been beating this drum over and over again, but honestly, I spent most of the time just playing it, thinking about how much better it would be if I was playing the Misfortune version. Like, actually, legitimately, a lot of the decks that just hard slam the Azir Irelia matchup, or that are really frustrating to play into as Azir Irelia, are way better when you're playing the Misfortune one. Because, like, if you have Misfortune out, then Thresh Nasus, that deck becomes so much less of a threat, because Fading Icon and their other 3 ones, they die to the Misfortune trigger, so they don't get the Slay triggers, and they don't trade with your units, so you just slowly run them down. Not to mention that essentially what happens is that you get a ton of damage in, and then your opponent gums up the board, and you can't do anything anymore unless you can happen to find your elusives, and they can't block elusives. That's not a problem with the Misfortune one, is that those blades are going to continue to do damage triggers as long as we have Corsair or Misfortune out. And if we have Misfortune out and we can level her up, it's going to do massive amounts of damage just by triggering attacks. Whether they can block our units, whether our units do any damage, that doesn't matter, because the Misfortune trigger alone will be enough to close out the game. So essentially the biggest problem I always had with the Misfortune version is that, unlike other traditional aggro decks typically running Noxus or Piltover, even like the Fist Elusives deck had this, you have burn spells in your deck, and the top of your deck, to ape a phrase from Magic the Gathering, the top of your deck is always relevant when burn is in it. But with Misfortune Irelia, you don't have burn. You're an aggro deck that doesn't have burn spells. So if your opponent can block, or can gum up the board, or deal with enough of your threats, you're going to run out of gas and not be able to kill them, because eventually, like, you're always going to have to win through board control. And that's just not going to work against some decks. And this deck, for Azir Irelia, it's even worse to, like, the nth degree, because the Misfortune Irelia one at least has the attack triggers from Corsair and Misfortune to get those last points of damage through. This has nothing. If they can gum up the board, if they can clog it up or kill enough of your units, like, there is nothing you can do. You'll never get the damage through. So, very frustrating for someone like me who spent so much time playing the MF version, that it's just... it feels so much weaker, and maybe the high roll of this deck is better than the Misfortune one, but the Misfortune one has much more consistency. So personally, it's the deck I'm probably going to put way more time into playing over the next week or two, rather than Azir Irelia, because I really just feel like it's stronger, especially against the way people have been teching for the meta right now. It's just... it can deal with things a little bit better and has that little extra closeout potential by dealing damage. And the worst shape, or the worst case scenario, is you just run into the mirror match. And honestly, I think this deck's taught me some lessons I think I can apply to the MF version and make it better, because Homecoming really is really good, and Sparring Student can be really, really good. So I may tweak the deck for both of those, essentially, to try and just push what it can do. But we'll see, because Sparring Student's a lot harder to pull off, because of the fact that we have Jagged Taskmaster, and it's so good for us to be able to play that on turn 2, then like some of the other 1-drops like Prowling Cutthroat is just such a guaranteed way to get the trigger that Sparring Student would not be as good for. So I'll definitely have to mess with the list, but my biggest takeaway playing this deck was just how much more I want to play Misfortune Irelia, and so that is likely where I'll be going next. But I hope you enjoy this look at Azir Irelia. It's one of the biggest decks in the meta. Well, it is the biggest deck in the meta right now, and 1 in every 5 players playing it. It is a solid deck, but right now the meta is becoming very toxic for it. It's becoming very toxic in general, but especially toxic for Azir Irelia. So if you like what you see, I'm apt to suggest you try the Misfortune version and see if that does a little bit better for you in the meta. But otherwise, this is a solid deck. It's a neat deck, very different from things we've seen previously. Closest we probably saw was the original Azir Ephemeral list, which still wasn't nearly as good as this. But yeah, sick deck, interesting. I probably won't play a ton of it more. I'll put a few more games into it probably for a good update on meta check, but otherwise I'm probably going to keep playing Misfortune Irelia. But if you enjoyed the video, leave a like, comment down below, and subscribe for more Legends of Runeterra content.